Market observations for Cairns in Queensland. Now this one comes to us by a hot request or user request, much often spoken of investment grade location across the country. This video I'm going to be taking a deep dive into the local government area, the citywide elements that we need to consider when making our investment in Cairns. Then I'm going to be looking at some individual suburbs that may be worthy of our attention and the streets that we should be targeting in those individual suburbs. So this is going to be an end-to-end deep dive of Cairns in Queensland. As always, property investment is a science. We need to take an analytical approach to this. We can't bring our emotion to the table. We can't go and invest in Cairns because our auntie at the barbecue on the weekend said you can't go wrong in Cairns. We need to look at the data and be led across the country, taking a borderless approach to our property investment. I always say live where you like and invest where is best. And we need to be taking that approach so we can maximise our returns in this environment where interest rates are causing a little bit of volatility. All right, so this is a scientific approach. We look at the data, we look at the where, and then we take a shorter term approach by looking at the when. Is it the right time to be buying in this area of strong opportunity? So let's firstly look at the longer time frame, the where, the overall opportunity in Cairns, and potentially compare it to other places across the country. So I like to see diversity in employment. I will be doing this in another way as well when we're looking at some employment studies. Health and social services is the big ticket item I like to see. That is the industry where most people are employed in in Cairns. And you might typically think that Cairns is all about tourism, far north Queensland, all these lifestyle factors. Well, healthcare and social assistance is numero uno for employment. It is the focal point of the general area. A lot of population in that far northern Queensland area does come towards Cairns for its core social services. And I like to see that as our main employer. We will be relating this back to the wider country in a moment, but it's good to see that to begin with. Unemployment on a national level, we're just over the 5% rate, but this is low to average, around average nationally at the moment. It has been impacted through COVID with, potentially the tourism sector's impacted. But overall, this is actually quite a low unemployment rate nationwide at the moment, and it has been extremely tight there in the last year or two. So this is not an area of concern at all. Population growth, we're heading just over that 1% per annum population growth. You can see it has been very consistent in the last decade or so, and expect this to continue. I mean, the weather is not to everyone's liking. It's great to go on a holiday and sit by a pool, but to live and work every day, it is quite warm, so you don't have those same lifestyle, climate-based migrants that come from, Melbourne, particularly Melbourne and Sydney, to the Gold Coast or to Brisbane. They're not going to Cairns for those similar sort of climate, tourists or immigrants, because it is just physically very hot. But it's great for a holiday. So a lot of the population growth in Cairns is on the back of employment-based migration, and then obviously general births and deaths increases there. So I'm going to be doing some more analysis on that in a moment. For doing that, we're going to jump over here now to picky, picki.com.au. It is one of our companies in the larger group of businesses. Cairns is rated in the top 92% of areas across the country. So when I'm talking about employment and population, we have to put it into context. This area is really punching above its weight, and it has done for some time. Overall, I won't skip ahead here. Let's have a look at the employment landscape. Once again, very diverse on a national level. Income growth is average, and when you consider this as a regional centre, that is actually very good. The commute time, not really relevant with this smaller city. It does get thrown around a little bit with people travelling an hour to remote mining sites, etc. Lifestyle is outstanding. It has all your big ticket items. Does it have the Bunnings test? Can't see it on the list here. I'm assuming there's a Bunnings or something like it in Cairns. It's a pretty big city. Definitely a larger regional centre with all of the things that come along with far north Queensland living. Beautiful climate for, more broadly, warm weather. Lots of lifestyle factors. You've got the scenic rim, the inland, cooler climates where you can go on those day trips, etc. You've got a lot of really big ticket spending items coming through the Cairns area. And the spend per capita is high on a national level, $18,000 per person. It's very, very high. When you consider this as a regional location, it is outstanding. Some of these big ticket items, how long has this been on the list here? Chris, it's probably been a decade that this project's been slated for construction. So whilst it is noted down here as a project, it does mean that it has been through that approval process. They haven't started construction, or I'm not sure if they have or they haven't right as of today, but it has been a very long-term announcement for the area. So you can't hang your hat on this project, even at the $2 billion spend. I think it's been a decade of, overseas money coming in and out of this project, and it's starting and stopping. You have a lot of infrastructure, industrial, retail, hospitality. Once again, remember this area is primarily healthcare, social services backed employment now, but we do see to have some construction and industrial investment coming towards the area. Population, we've already covered this to some degree. Look, it is under the national average. It's not necessarily a large population growth story. And remember the concept, low population growth sometimes it's not a bad thing. It might mean that there are a lot of people wanting to move to the area, but no houses for them to move into. So that can cause dramatic price pressure. 3% population growth forecast for the next 3 years. Okay? New construction. I expect to see in these types of locations, they are an established core, but then on the periphery you have some areas where there's a lot of new homes being constructed. Sometimes it's a minefield. Overall, for this type of growth location, 1.6% new homes in the construction pipeline is actually pretty low on a national level. It's saying that it's high here when you compare it against every other established area across the country. But when you compare it to these growth locations, it's actually pretty low. You're looking at parts of Playford in South Australia or lots of parts of Perth, etc. You've got over 2, 3, 4% new homes in the construction pipeline. Moreton Bay there in Brisbane, 8%. Logan, 5, 6, 7% in most parts of Logan. So when you look and put this in context of other areas like Cairns, it's actually quite low. If you compare it to established suburbia with no real blocks available for development, it's potentially high, but we need to put this in context, okay? There are some suburbs here with 27% new homes in the construction pipeline. You come in here around the CBD area, CBD area of Cairns, all in around here. We've got, usually very low new homes in the construction pipeline. You come up here to some of these suburbs though, and you do have some red flags, 4.7% there just in our north. So we have to navigate this information. What we have here, guys, overall is outstanding. At a local government area level, Cairns is really punching above its weight. Let's have a look at, is this the right time to be buying? So this analysis that we've done so far is more about the longer term opportunity, but is it the right entry point for us to position ourselves in there now? Days on market, very low. It has just popped up a little bit here, particularly for units. Don't care about that. I care about the red line, and that one's quite steady, still at 20 days on market. So a very high, quickly turning over market. Number of immediate sales has just dropped off in October. We had a very, very heated period here in May, and it has been trending downwards since. So potentially there are some indications that the market is losing a little bit of steam as of right now. That might mean that it is coming up towards a market peak. Number of stock on market, it is pretty consistent. We're still not even back at to longer term trend lines. We have a dip here in August, but it has popped back again in September. No real insight there from that metric. Days of supply, red, it is still low, around 70, very low for a regional centre, and it's still quite stable. So we have a lot of turnover, a lot of heat, a lot of constriction, a lot of building of pressure in this market. I am just sensitive though that all of these graphs are just turning the wrong way slightly. Okay, all of them are very subtly indicating to me that a peak might be emerging. Asking price, we've really moved very quickly up here towards 575. Okay, this is at a citywide level. We hit this in August, right? So if we remember back here, all of this really high competition resulted in this really strong upwards pressure in price. And remember guys, what is the biggest handbrake on future demand, on future price growth? It is previous price performance. Less and less people can afford to pay these prices to live in this area, and suddenly markets lose steam. They go through shorter periods, shorter cycles where they gather that momentum back in again. Okay, so this has been a very prolonged period of rapid price acceleration, and we have hit a top at 575 in the market. And that was after that May levels of really high competition. You know, so really high, I think it was about 30% of properties selling in under 1 week. There's a lot of people fighting over the properties available for purchase. That pushed property prices up. And then a few months after all of that sales competition, the market has hit a top. It has come back off that top again, and now it looks to be consolidating. It's as if you've got a big brick wall built there at 575. The market is pinging back off that resistance. Okay, so this potentially is now once again another sign that we have reached a short-term consolidation or a peak of the market. Vendor discounting. This is still showing signs. Look at the houses here, guys. 2.5%. So this is a very heated market. Properties selling for more than the asking prices, but this is all once again trending in the wrong direction. So once again, confirming that property prices now have potentially reached a market peak. And the actual sales price, so remember, asking price was the red line, times vendor discounting equals sold house prices, very simple terms, and we can see that this has peaked here as well. So for me, I'm definitely seeing very clear signs here at a city level that Cairns, we probably missed our entry point here. This is showing that it's maybe around that 11 or 12 o'clock, maybe firmly on midnight in the property clock. We've probably missed our boat, our entry point. Let's do some rental analysis. For me, I wanted to determine, is this potentially a longer term consolidation over a few years? We know this is a really strong market for our overall opportunity. We know this has got a lot of really positive things going for it, but we've missed our entry point now, and for this type of affordable location, we look to the rental market to determine how likely or how soon that market is potentially going to start its next leg upwards. Okay, is it years? Is it months? Okay, days on rental market, very low, extreme high competition turnover in the rental market. Vacancy rates, a little bit higher than the national average at the moment, believe it or not, but still under about 1.5, not really trending in any direction in particular. House prices have now plateaued as well. Asking house rents have now plateaued as well since around April. So they have hit a market cap. People are not paying past $550 a week to rent in Cairns. That has now been a very strong plateau or market top for almost 6 months. This is showing us that it is a pretty tight rental market, but people are not willing to pay more than $550 a week to rent in Cairns as a city, and now that's trickling through, and we've seen a top on the buy side as well. This hasn't continued to really push forward, right, and show us that there's a lot of heat and momentum building in the rental side of the market that might flip over to the buy side. I'm not seeing that. So for me, this is potentially a longer term consolidation. This is not a 3-month, let's get going again. This is potentially going to be 12, 18, 24 months of consolidation before we start seeing these signs back on the buy side. All right, yields have popped up again with rent stable and sales prices just pulling back slightly. That has meant that yields have increased, but it is not on the back of price stabilization and increasing rents. It is the opposite. Prices have pulled back and rents have been the same, and that's why yields have increased. It's not a bullish sign here, guys. We like to see them in alignment together. Rents increasing, yields increasing is a good bullish sign. So for me, at a city, I do feel that we have reached a market peak, and we aren't seeing any strong signs that this is going to be a short-term peak and we can still keep buying. If you did have a gun to your head and you wanted to buy in Cairns, we've got 65 suburbs in the region ranked from best to worst, so most likely to be in the buying window and most likely to be past that, okay? Working our way down this list, I have just gone into number 1 on the list. We can sort of view from here, it has had strong, so this is number 1 on the list. So even though the city is potentially in a market peak, even a consolidation phase now, there might be laggard suburbs that are really just entering into their buying window. And these suburbs at the top of that list are the highest potential to be that place. You know, we've got suburbs next door to this, 18% just to the north, 8% just to the south in terms of capital growth. This area hasn't really grown much in the last few months. It might be just starting its run. Does it have that 2 in 3 owner occupiers that I like to see? It has. It's got 4 in 5 people here are owner occupiers. So you have that really strong intrinsic demand for housing from owner occupiers, which is a really positive sign. Okay, we're just going to have a look at the yield, and although it is high at 5.5% yield, you know, very high nationally, it is still lower than its immediate neighbours here at the north and the east, but it is a little bit higher than down here to the south, Mount Sheridan. I do like to see areas that have a higher yield compared to its neighbours, but it can't be that because it is lower socio. It has to just have that stronger rental demand, a very healthy rental market, not the fact that it is just a lower socio area. This one for me, high, you know, average for the area vacancy rate, whilst we have extremely tight rental markets all the way around it. I would potentially like to see and prefer to see that as tighter vacancies compared to its immediate neighbours. If you had a gun to our head, we had to buy here. Occupancy type is not a concern in any of the areas. I like to see above average rents, any of these locations through here, and above average yield. This is extremely bullish, these two areas, potentially even these three across the top. Higher than average rents, higher than average yields. No public housing of any concern. So we can very quickly come in and do our street analysis and potentially target, you know, 600 dwellings here across the whole of Cairns that are really still potentially in that buying window and leading the place forward. But remember, we are fighting against the grain. Cairns is potentially at a short-term market top, and I see no indications that this is going to be months. It's potentially going to be a year or more in consolidation. Remember, if you are going into Cairns, that insurance policies are a consideration. Sure Insurance, S-U-R-E Insurance, is potentially your best port of call for lowering your insurance premiums. I would potentially be looking at further south than Cairns, right as of now. If not Townsville, Mackay, Rockhampton, Bundaberg. These are probably my picks for the far north of Queensland. Hopefully this has been of use, guys. Any questions, jump in the comments. If you see anyone else talking about Cairns, share the link to the video. I'm sure that it's hopefully going to be useful to them as well. Thank you.